Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you're going to meet the owner of Stanley Korshak. The great Crawford Brock is in the house. His incredible journey just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I can't think of a more iconic brand when you think about luxury in Dallas than Stanley Korshak. And so a good friend of mine is Chuck Steelman, and he was on my show recently, and he says, you know who you need to meet? You need to meet the owner. Crawford Brock is in the house. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for including me.
The most impressive thing that I've heard, and we did a little pre-game interview, you did not grow up around luxury. You grew up in Rome, Georgia.
That's correct.
What was the highest end store in Rome, Georgia?
I think it was called Esserman's, and it was a men's store. And I think my mother took me down there and get a blazer. I went to this boys' school that we had a navy blazer, gray slack uniform, white button-down shirt. Still got it on. So that's as high as it got.
All right. So how does a guy like you from Rome, Georgia, go from that to kind of the king of luxury in Dallas?
Great story. In business school, I took a lot of classes. We did case studies, as you're doing things, and one of them was this book called The Paths to Profits, and it was Neiman Marcus, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Coca-Cola. And it was my last year of school, and I wrote letters to those companies about potential job, and it was about their success stories, And so I heard from the Neiman's people, and there was a guy who traveled around, and he interviewed me, and I was offered a job. So I ended up moving to Texas.
Okay, what was your first job at Neiman's?
Well, it was through their executive development program. It started in August. And I remember when I arrived in Texas, the big blue sky, it was 100 degrees. I mean, I thought I was on vacation. And so I was very excited to be here. And I'm thinking, God, and you're going to pay me too. So I'm coming to Neiman's and here in Dallas, and it was just a great move, and it's been a nice start.
Okay, well, do you remember meeting the great Stanley Marcus for the first time?
I do. It was, the whole experience was amazing. I was placed as an assistant buyer on the men's side, and then after a year they sent me to Washington, D.C. I was there for 18 months, managing half the first floor, and I was very young, 24 maybe, and was brought back as the men's clothing buyer. And I remember we were opening up the San Diego store, so I was one of the representative buyers to go out and talk to the staff and give them kind of the culture talk. And I was now 28, and my wife was a college tennis player, actually a top 10 junior, real good, as one of the nationals twice. Much better than I am. And so we stayed at the La Jolla Beach and Tennis Club, and she and I were out hitting. She's left-handed, so we're hitting forehands down the line and backhands down the line. Phil Miller, the CEO for Neiman's, walks by, and it was early in the morning, and sees us playing and says, well, Crawford, I didn't know you played tennis. My wife and I play. You want to play tonight? And I went, okay. Well, quickly, it was he and I against the girls, because the other way wasn't going to work with Janet and I playing them. And so he said, well, let's play tomorrow. So we played the next 3 mornings and kind of got to know each other. I go back to Dallas. He calls me up to his office and said, really enjoyed getting to know you, Crawford, and we've got some issues in the Beverly Hills store, and I want you to, go out and move out there. And I'm like, you're talking to the CEO, what do you say? And well, I would prefer to stay here in Dallas. We love, I went on downtown or North Park, or even Houston, but we've got a lot of friends here and we'd prefer to stay here. And his line was, well, if you're on the fence, I want you to go. So you're going. And so I ended up moving out to Beverly Hills. And you know, that moment, the Dallas program was big in Hollywood, and you know, Beverly Hills was exploding. Everybody was moving there, and it was just a great wave to catch. I was so lucky. And so we went from 28 million to 100 million, number one store in the company, beat out North Park and Houston, which are two mall stores. Learned so much in that experience with you had 80 buyers, 8 or 10 divisionals that were over certain areas that you're talking to about the content. And the content in LA was nothing like any of the stores were carrying. The people in LA were traveling to Europe and they've seen all these big brands. And part of the success was getting Dallas to understand who we were. And Phil Miller had my back as I made the first Armani buy for the men's side. And it exploded as we thought. And I got a phone call in year 5 from a headhunter who represented Mrs. Hunt, Carolyn Rose Hunt, who'd built the Crescent. So you have the office tower, hotel, and retail complex. And they needed somebody to come help run that. And I turned it down. It was August of '87. Not for any reason. I just felt pretty safe where I was. Didn't know much about this program or what they had going on. Did a little bit of research, and they called me back in October and said, okay, you're it. Dallas connection, luxury retail. What have we left off your bucket list? And I said, well, honestly, to lead the number one store in the company would have to be something like the opportunity to own a business. And of course, Ms. Hunt and her family could afford anything. And they said, the message came back, yeah, we can make that happen. And I went, okay. So I came back to Dallas, and was not really what I thought exactly, but it was October of '87. Dallas was going into a downturn with the oil business, and pretty much the staff that was there, honestly, I fired everybody except for one person, but I didn't do it initially, but I went back up to the CEO of their company right after the first board meeting, and they had consultants in there who were kind of taking their fees, but really not moving in the right direction, in my opinion. And so had 86, all of them, and it's now May of '88, and Neiman's has gone through a big buyout with General Cinema, and they came in and literally fired all the executives and created a new board. Stanley Marcus wasn't on it. And I realized that in going up to the board meetings for 6 or 8 that we'd had thus far, that the family was really, you know, I'm talking sell-throughs and retail terms and this sort of thing. They're in the oil business, and they had hotels, the Rosewood Resorts and Hotel business. And I remember we'd have these president meetings, and there'd be a bar graph, and the oil bar graph was going up like this, and then the hotels was up here, and then I was in the all other, and it was red down below. And I, realized I've got to get this thing going, or I'm going to be out on the streets. The good news is Neiman's had called me at least twice already, like, what are you doing over there? Anyway, so I called Stanley Marcus when he was not on the board anymore and said, I'm over here. And he knew me from LA because he'd come out at least once a quarter. And so we'd have lunch up in the Zodiac. And I said, I need your help. Would you come help me? He said, I'll be there tomorrow. And he moved his office over. And so I had 8 years of Stanley Marcus in my office, or I'm in his, every day.
Wow.
And we traveled to New York several times. And he was a Harvard Mensa, knew retail more than everybody, was a showman. We talked. I asked him every question was, why did you bring in Carter Hawley Hale? I needed the money. We were expanding, but I still kept control. How do you build a business? Well, one brick at a time. And we talked about setting up the business in a direction. I remember he said, well, Crawford, who do you want to be? And I'm like, well, what do you mean, who do I want to be? He said, well, do you want to be a discounter? And I went, well, no, sir, I don't know discounting. I mean, I came out of Beverly Hills. We were, more on the luxury side. Well, then you want to be a luxury retailer. Then you want to carry jewelry and furs. Well, yes, sir. And that's how we started. So the trick that was working in LA, and I call it a trick, but it really wasn't, just obvious. If you can have a defined real estate and you're generating so many dollars per square foot selling $100 items, the way you increase that sales per square foot is sell $1,000 items in the same space. And that's what we started doing out there. And so that formula translated to what Stanley and I were talking about. And so that began the program. And in his word, in his mind, it was quality. Quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. And every quote like that, and there's 100 are in my head. I have 1,000 letters in my office I'd love to show you sometime from him. I'm going to write a book, but it's not going to be about so much about that as it is about some other cool things that we can talk about. But
Absolutely.
his knowledge of building, if he could come back now and see here we are at a $50 million business, and when he was around me, we were doing $2 million, losing $2 million, and finally got to $22 million, and our good friends downtown, Neiman, decided that we were getting big enough now they were going to start cutting us off for lunch, which I would have done the same thing as a buyer going into the market and say, here's our $1 million order, but don't sell Korshak. And so he and I were talking about it one day. He walked in and said, Crawford, what's in the way of you doing business? And I said, well, I'm starting to get blocked out of lines that I can't get. And he said, well, like who? And I said, well, like Donna Karen. He said, well, do you have her number? I said, their number. I said, well, yes, sir. It's in my Rolodex behind my desk. So he comes, sits at my desk. I go back, get the number out. I'm standing beside him, give him the number. He dials it. This is Stanley Marcus for Donna Karen. Is she available? Of course, if I'd called, I would never hear back. But he did. She got on the phone and said, this is Stanley Marcus. I'm with this fine young man. He's the president of Stanley Korshak, and he'd like to carry your line. Well, we'd love to sell him. Well, let me put him on. Well, hello, Miss Karen, how are you? I was 28, okay, wow. And this is happening. Excuse me, I was 33. So I'm still kind of, wow, this is happening. And she said, well, yeah, we'd love to sell you, Crawford. Let me have my sales director call you, who I knew, who'd been denying us. And he called me, and we got the line. And when I hung up the phone, I looked at Mr. Stanley, and we high-fived. Who else? So we started smiling and dialing, got everybody. And there began this great trend and explosive growth, and it was a very cool thing to happen.
Oh, especially for a young man from Rome, Georgia.
Right.
So I want to talk about the latest news is the big remodel. So tell us, we're going to put some pictures on the screen so people can get a feel for what you've done. This was a major renovation, wasn't it?
Right. This is something I talked about and have wanted to do for a decade. And just to give you a little quick history, J.P. Morgan owned the office and the retail complex. And the hotel was owned by the Hunt family, but they sold it, and John Goff bought it. Mm-hmm. So he was surrounded by J.P. Morgan's owning these office and the retail complex. And so I'm now flying to New York, meeting with this young man who was probably 28, who had gone to Harvard, gotten his MBA, and he knew everything. And I'm up there with Ignaz Gorsuch, who'd done all 42 of Neiman's stores and remodel. I'm with our divisional VP and senior vice president of Korshak, who was a great merchant had come out of Neiman's. And I'm with another lady who'd gotten her undergraduate from Princeton and her graduate from Harvard, and she was running all our e-commerce social media. So, I had some stellar people sitting in front of this guy, and he was talking about turning the space into a food court, and he was talking about a bowling alley, and I'm just shaking my head. I see John Goff at a funeral, thank God, and I said, John, look, you know what's going to happen when Korshak turns into a food court, and I move over to Highland Park Village or to Knox Henderson, you're going to have a mess on your hands, because I put 500 rooms a night into your hotel. And these are not just any people. These are designers from all over the world and very wealthy people flying in for staycation. And also a lot of the Highland Park parents that are staying here to go look at the school. And by the way, my daughter ended up going there. I've got 3 daughters. We can talk about that too later. Anyway, so with John buying now the retail and the office, they came back to me and said, well, what would you like to sign, Crawford? What is your thinking? I said, well, I'll sign a 25-year lease. So they said, great. So they locked in a 25-year lease. So having a 25-year runway, now I can go spend the $5 million plus to go do all these great things. So we started down in men's, and if you walk through men's, it's a world-class, one-of-one men's stores in the world. There's nothing like it. That leads off with Brunello Cucinelli, who's one of my favorites, the largest Brunello men's space in the country.
Speaking of that, we've got a picture. You get to hang around all these amazing people, but you're so humble. I mean, a lot of people would get full of themselves and name drop, but I mean,
I'm going to talk about that later too, because there's a reason. But Brunello what a story. And, you know, he invited me to an award he got in New York. And, you know, I flew up with 2 other retailers. There were no major brands there, but Donna Kieran had gotten ironically, Donna Kieran got the same award. And she got up and thanked her, you know, her valet driver and her personal assistant. Brunello gets up and he doesn't speak English and is an interpreter. And he says, look, I grew up dirt poor. My father was a farmer. I was teased in school, and I love clothes. And so as he became a billionaire and the hottest brand in the world, he, you know, was given back to Solomeo and rebuilt the entire community and town and village and so forth. But we just hit it off right away. And that came because he was a soccer player. I played college soccer, and he was a soccer player, and he came into my office, and his picture was behind my desk from this invitation I'd received. Somebody took our picture there, and he saw the picture and he goes, well, Crawford, you played soccer. Which one are you? I said, that's me right there. Oh, you were number 10. I was number 5. And so we started opening up and created this real romance, you know, that he was this cool guy and a great family. And anyway, so we built the biggest men's Brunello Cucinelli store, a men's store in the country with a bar, and it's exploded business up 100%. Then we built an Isaiah space, and we built a Senia space. Then we built the Cucinelli, the Keaton space, and Keaton is the finest brand in the world. Wow. And when I say that, I mean it's the hours that go into making the garment there's nothing close to it. And that is a $5 million business for us, and it's $18,000 suits. And then you've got Brioni, which is another huge brand, and you've got Attalini, Mr. Attalini and Mr. Keaton, who's Ciro Peoni, worked together in the Keaton factory, and he left and started his own business. Wow. And he did his business the way we did, one brick at a time, no marketing, just I sell nice things, I make nice things, and Attalini's also exploded for us. But the whole men's business has more than doubled in the last 18 months. It's been phenomenal, that part.
Talk to me about the culture and the vibe, because obviously you sell the best of the best. Tell me about the team, tell me about the feeling when you come in.
Okay, great question. You know, you walk in, and I hear this literally daily, and I work 6 days, 10 hours. And only because I really, for the first time in 47 years, enjoy what I'm doing. I mean, I really like the people I work with. I like where we are. I mean, it's our time as we've now signed this lease and doing all the construction. And it's been very good. So I hear they walk in and you look up at the space because it's 2 stories up. It's like nobody has a store like this. It's not a strip mall. It's not just a store. It's something more than that. Art's hanging all over the place. There's a piece of art that we had commissioned by a lady here in town, and she, Carlin Ray, I spent 2 years with Chihuly, and she has Italian pulled glass. So this fixture is in the shape of DNA, and it curves around. It's 500 pounds, 600 pieces of Italian pulled glass, and about 100 color shades, and it's who we are. Wow. Service, great people, lovely customers. And you know, we're not a business of a lot of people that shop there by intent. We sell nice things, and so it attracts nice people that can afford to buy and are not so intimidated by real crazy expensive things. And consequently, we have, you know, as I call it, a few people who spend a lot of money. We have valet parking every day. We have a police officer in the store every day. We have 2 undercover security people every day. Everybody's packing. We have 0 theft, external, internal. It just doesn't happen. Wow, it is. It's a very pleasant environment, and I hear it every day from people, and they say the same thing. This is a beautiful store. I've never seen anything like it. And these are people coming out of New York and Europe. And by the way, your staff, and they start talking about how nice they are. And I'm going to back up and tell you one more story if you'll let me.
Please.
Okay. So I grew up in Rome. I went to a school called Darlington. It was 25% day students and 75% boarding students. I was a day student. I brought the IQ of our family down. As I mentioned, my father was a surgeon and my brothers and sisters were all doctors. And anyway, so in Rome, we had our English teacher was our soccer coach. Okay, our English teacher knew nothing about soccer. And here he has these 1971, I'm 16. There was a common denominator with our class. We became this extraordinary class. Don't know why, 30 years later, and I'll tell you more about that. But the common denominator was that all our dads had been in World War II. And we were the first sons of these guys. And every one of my friends, it was their story. It didn't hit us until later as we still became very close. And the closest thing I can relate it to is St. Mark's. Those are similar kind of fellas, and I've met a lot of the 71 grads when I came out and played flag or touch football behind the St. Mark's school. Anyway, so our English teacher read everything there was about soccer. And he brought the magnetic board out and said this, and we're going to run this slope defense. We didn't know what he was talking about, but we believed him. Practices started, we're on the varsity field, and he throws Logan Cox off the field. Remember Logan?
Yeah.
Throws Logan off the field. And we're like stunned because Logan's a good student, but a tremendous athlete. He just threw the best athlete in the school off the field. What are you thinking? And he knew exactly what he was doing. And what he wanted, and it's kind of like the Miracle on Ice, the hockey story, where this coach pulls all these kids together who came from different schools and didn't like each other. But he was going to feed the wolf, or he'd blow the whistle again, and they were skating up and down, and they really got in shape. And they sort of started to get it, realized they were playing for the United States hockey team and not for, the UMass and the other places that they came from. That's what this coach did. He ran us to death. And, we were all of these kids who just did what we were told. No ego, just yes, sir. And so we all got really fit. We believed in this slope defense that he made up. And we won every game in the state championship. And we came from behind in the finals to win it, which is another kind of book story. And we were the 71 Tigers. And I mentioned the name Logan because I realized 30 years later, we all had a reunion with our English teacher, okay? And we reenacted the picture of this 11. And here's what happened. 5 became doctors. 2 went to the Naval Academy. 2 took over their family businesses, of which one of them, they were baking honey buns. And the boys came back from Chapel Hill and Davidson and took over the family business, and they went vertical. They bought all the flour mills, and the company, they renamed it Southeastern Mills, and it's a $1.8 billion company. These are just little Rome boys.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that would basically run your hearts out, never give up. And so 30 years later, I realized what he was doing. And what he was doing was, these were Meacham kids. Have you ever read Pat Conroy's book, The Great Santini?
Yes.
Okay, well, it was about a Navy aviator. He's moved his kids all over the country. They're now in Savannah. And he's got the kids lined up, and there was 4 of them, and it's the son and the daughter. And then I think the other daughter, and then a son, and they're kind of sitting there, and he's talking to them as though they're his platoon, like, whatever Navy aviators call themselves. And he's saying that you guys are Meacham, because his name was Bull Meacham. And Meacham kids are the best athletes, they're the best students, they're thoroughbreds. Meacham kids chew rocks while other kids eat cotton candy. We were Meachams. So if you work for me, you want to be a Meacham, which means that whatever it takes, no matter how, we're going to outwork everybody. And that's my culture, my nature is nobody will ever outwork me. And I want to hire people way better than I am. And that was something Stanley talked to me about. But the other side of Logan who got kicked off the team, God bless him, when I saw him, he had put on a lot of weight. He was lazy. He was a superstar, but he was lazy. And, I don't like lazy superstars. I don't know about you, but you can't work for me if you're a superstar and you're lazy. Love superstars, but not lazy ones. In fact, I don't want any lazy. So in our buyer meetings every morning, so we had one this morning at 10 that I missed, so somebody ran it for me, but we talk about, are you a Meacham? Yeah, everybody in the building's a Meacham. but are you a Logan? Have you seen a Logan in the building? Is anybody in your area a Logan? Because I want to hunt them down. I know who you are. Wow. We have one. And I'm trying to culture through that. But, you know, Logans don't make it with us because they pull down everybody, you know. And when Logans get relieved of their duty, the morale goes up because everybody knows.
You inspire me. That's probably a book and a movie. Start thinking about who they're going to cast as you, maybe a young Brad Pitt. So, we've got a couple minutes left. So final thoughts. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Wow. Well, I think that, you know, I guess really the thing I'm thinking about is that, you know, I'm turning 70 next year.
You look great.
And I really, for the first time, enjoy what I'm doing. I mean, I love coming to work every day. I think it's why I'm able to work 10-hour days and 6 days a week. I really like what I'm doing. And I like where I'm at with the people that work for me and the success that we're having. And I think it inspires me. And so I've tried to commit to everyone there that I'm going to work another 10. I don't know if I can make that, but I'm going to certainly try. Stanley Marcus was with me, and he was around 80.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was getting up there, but still completely with it and very energized. So
well, you inspire me. I just turned 60, and
You're a kid.
I'm telling you, you really inspire me. And I think we've got a bunch of Meachams here.
All right.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, and we're going to end with the website, which is of course StanleyKorshak.com. The great Crawford Brock. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.